My name is Rano Gayley. The bell goes off. And I have been living in India since 1937, when I came to Baba in the Western Ashram. Actually, my mother, Nani, and I met Baba in 1933. That is, we heard about him in the spring of 1933 in Paris, and we met him in London in the autumn of 1933. It happened that we were walking on the streets of Paris one day with a friend of ours by the name of Rano Gayley. And I heard a man behind calling and calling. At last I said to her, "I think, Rano, somebody is calling you." So she turned around, and it turned out to be Quentin Todd, who was one of the early Western men followers of Baba in England, an Englishman. And he had been looking all over Paris for Rano, and as we thought it was coincidence, we met him on the streets of Paris. We went up to her apartment that night, and he showed us photos of Baba. Now, Nani had been, what might say, religious-minded or a seeker most of our life. I never had. I'd always been taking life as it came and didn't worry about the next day or what's going to happen to my soul later on. But when Nani saw Baba's photo, she was so happy because she said that she had seen it in one of the American newspapers, and it evidently must have been the time when Baba came to America the very first time. And there was no name or caption under the photo, so she didn't know who it was. But she said to herself, someday I'm going to meet that man. Now I think, before I go on any further, I should sort of give you a word picture of Nani, as you have no photo of her. Nani was just the opposite of what I am. She was very petite, very dainty, very elegant, and a perfectionist in everything she did. And though, as I say, she was a seeker, at the same time she also liked the nice things of life. She dressed beautifully, she had a very well-appointed home, food was always very well served. So that is why it was such a wonder to me that when she decided to follow Baba, she gave it up without a thought. And when you'd see Nani traveling with us in the blue bus, and she had her little sack like we all did, with an enamel plate and an enamel mug, and a spoon and a fork and a knife, and never a murmur, never a complaint, day in, day out when we traveled in the blue bus, with dust coming in the cracks, and hours of driving and no food. She's the one person that never complained. And I always felt that she was somebody very special for Baba, because the way Baba treated her, he was always so considerate of her, always so taking care of her in a way. And she never had a test like any of us. I mean, Baba was always testing us, or maybe needling us, or trying us out in one way or the other. Somehow or other, he never seemed to have to do that with Nani. Whatever Baba said, she accepted. Whatever he wanted her to do, she did without question. Now, an amusing incident of that is that after we first met Baba in London, we'd only been there a few days at Hygeia House with Baba, when I saw Quentin and Ruano in a huddle on the stair landing. And I said, "What are you two doing?" And they said, "Well, we have a very awkward thing to ask Nani. We don't know how to do it. And after all, she's only just met Baba." I said, "Why? What is it?" "Well, there's somebody that's painted a portrait of Baba, rather it was a pastel of Baba, and Baba wants Nani to buy it." Well, I said, "All right, ask her. At least, I mean, you can ask her. If she wants to say no, she'll say no, if not otherwise." And you really think so? I said, "Of course." So they went up and asked her and said, Baba wants you to buy this drawing. It'll be some odd amount of 2 shillings and 2 pounds, some odd shillings and pence. And Nani opened her purse and handed it right out. Baba heard about it. He was very happy, embraced Nani. He said, now one thing you have to do, and that is wherever you are, even if you only spend a night away from home, you have to carry that portrait with you. So Nani said she would. She had a case made for it, a couple of straps to hold it, and everywhere as we went, I had to carry the portrait of Baba. I went to take it out of the case and hang it up in the hotel bedroom, whatever country we happened to be in, whatever place. Again, we'd pack it. Had some fantastic experiences going through the customs, or the customs men saying, who is this, a relation of yours? I thought, yes, that's the easiest thing to say. So I said, yes, he's a relation of mine. And they let it go through. So when we came to India, we first went and stayed with Baba at Nasik, what Baba called the Western Ashram, and also was considered the luxury ashram, because Baba had not given us an inkling of what it would be like. So on the way we'd bought mirrors and leather cushions to sit on and all sorts of things, flashlights. Yes, that's the easiest thing to say. So I said, yes, he's a relation of mine. And they let it go through. So when we came to India, we first went and stayed with Baba at Nasik, what Baba called the Western Ashram, and also was considered the luxury ashram, because Baba had not given us an inkling of what it would be like. So on the way we'd bought mirrors and leather cushions to sit on and all sorts of things, flashlights, because we didn't know whether we were going to sleep on the floor or what you did in India. And when we arrived in Nasik, we found this beautifully appointed place with bedrooms to ourselves and all the comforts that we would have in the West. Then Baba told us one day, I've given you all these things, and one by one I'll take them away from you. And with some of us he did, because when we came to live at Meherbad afterwards, we just had the bare necessities there. Bed and a chair and the bags around to keep the things in. While we were in Nasik, Baba put Nani on a 40-day fast. And that was really quite something, because she was fasting for 40 days unearned. Then, after we left Nasik, we went to Cannes. And when we were at Cannes, I happened to stay with Baba and the Indian women and Kitty and Narina and Elizabeth. We stayed at one house with Baba. Nani and married couples and Mandali and guests came and stayed at another house where Baba used to go to back and forth every day. And was a bit perturbed at first, because we had been pretty much together, traveling and everything. And after the first few days when I'd accompanied Baba to that other house, Baba gave me an order that as soon as I left him there, I should return back to my house. Not talk to anybody in the house, excepting maybe 20 minutes with Nani, and go on back. So poor Nani, having such a short time to talk with me, used to make a list of the things that she had to ask me. So the day came when Baba had said to me, did I want to return to India with him? And I said, do I? Having completely forgotten the fact that when we were in Nasik, Meherbad, on our first visit, Baba had called us each one by one to ask us what our opinion was in reaction to our visit to Meherbad, meeting the Eastern women. And of course they lived in seclusion up on the hill in Meherbad. And when my turn came and Baba asked me, I said, "Oh, Baba, it's very nice, but not for me." Baba smiled at the time and didn't say anything. And after I had said, "Do I?" when he asked me, did I want to come back to India, then it all flashed back on me, that completely about face which I had done from the very first time when there was a question of being in India. And at that time when Baba had asked me if I wanted to come back to India, he had decided that Nani should not come back at the same time. So Baba said, "What will Nani say? What will she do?" I said, "Baba, whatever you say, she'll accept." "So, you think so?" I said, "Of course, Baba." So then I was going to have to tell Nani later, and so I was very bothered because I knew Nani that she would be anxious also to come back to India. And so Baba asked her over to our house for lunch that day, and then afterwards Baba said, Rano, tell Nani. So then I told Nani, Baba said, "I'm to come now, but you are to follow later on." And that's the one time I ever heard Nani remonstrate, and she said, "Oh, can't I come now?" Baba said, "No, you have to come later." And he told her that she was to come back at the time of his birthday in 1938. But she did. And Baba then sent her to America. She saw the family. Baba said, "Take your time." But because his first order had been for her to come back at the time of the birthday, she immediately booked a passage to come back to India when she got to New York. Then, as I say, there was that blue bus period where Nani always was a marvel to me with her endurance and her patience with difficult situations. And anyway, Nani was one of these people that didn't know how to be annoyed. I had a temper and let fly. And I remember many, many years ago, Nani once got annoyed about something, and she turned to my brother and said, "Well, I got angry." And my brother said, "Well, you've only just getting human." She never could understand why people got angry about silly things. She used to despair over me, but there's just nothing to be done about it. That blue bus trip, it was at that time when Nani first started writing poems, which I think some of them have been published in the Awakener or some other magazines. Nani never written any poems before. They were all on Baba and the Beloved. They were very lovely. And then when we came back to Meherabad in I think it was the summer of '39 or earlier than that. Then again we started on a trip and went to Bangalore. And it was just before that when Nani started getting arthritis. And even though it was very painful, she never complained in any way. And in 1939, when we were in Bangalore, she had a sudden heart attack in October of 1939. And Baba had been away all day. Nani at that time was in an oxygen tent. And when Baba came back that evening at 7 o'clock, he said the doctors told him that Nani had just passed away. Baba came into the room. Nani was still lying there with her eyes open. And Baba closed her eyes. And you felt this sigh. And I personally felt that Nani had just been waiting for Baba to come and close her eyes. And you really, truly felt that Nani had come to Baba. And she is one of the, one of two or three at the most persons of Baba's close disciples of Baba that Baba has been near when they passed away. Baba has usually never been in the vicinity. Even when his own mother died, she was in Pune, Baba was up in Mamleshwar. And it was quite an exception. So that was, Nani had a very short period with Baba. It was a very full period. The name that Baba gave her was Kamali. Kamali means great one. Yes, she got tears. She died. That means she's now enjoying bliss. As a matter of fact, well, it must have been a week or more before Nani passed away. She was like so many people that before they go, they're suddenly feeling better. And she was feeling so much better, and Baba had planned that we should go down to Mysore at that time for the Dasharat festival. She was telling me, oh, do this and do that. And I was getting out things for her. And then Nani took a bit of turn for the worse. And so Baba called me one day, and he said to me, Rano, will you mind if Nani dies? I said, no, Baba. And I said, it's whatever's your will. So then he said to me, why are you crying? So I said at the time, it was not myself I'm crying for, but because of my brother. I knew he wouldn't understand. So Baba said, no, don't worry about that. I'll take care of it. And I think in time my brother did become resigned, that there was nothing that even if Nani'd been in America that he could have done. And that everything had been possibly done for her that could be done before she, because it, even though, I mean, nobody ever just dies of arthritis, and she actually died of a heart attack. So that's how it was. And Nani is the first one of Baba's women disciples to have been buried up on Meherbad Hill. And that little banyan tree now has become very big with a whole line up there that they've got now. After so many years. So I say it's the story of Nani. Take life as it came and didn't worry about things one way or the other. I used to wonder sometimes when things didn't turn out the way they should, or the way I expected them to, actually. And I remember we were coming back with Bob on the ship across the Atlantic, just Rano, Nani, and myself in 1934 in December with the waves piling high. And Bob came to our stateroom one day, and I was chewing on this a bit about, all these things that seemed to have gone not quite according to what I wanted them to. And then I looked at Baba. I said, Baba, if any of these things had turned out the way I wanted them to, I wouldn't be here now. I said, no, you wouldn't. They used to call Rano and Nani and me the Trinity. And he told us we should always be together, and we were practically, the latter years when then we came out here and she stayed in America. We were quite a combination, the three of us. Now, I'll tell you the story of Kitty Davy and myself during the time of the new life. To me, it was an unusual experience, I think just as much for Kitty as it was for me. We had hoped very much that Baba would include the two of us in the New Life group that was to go on this long trek of helplessness and hopelessness. We'd really quite sort of looked forward to doing it with Baba. Bob explained to us that two Westerners going along like this, just walking the highways, might cause the authorities to question, and he wouldn't want that. So he said, you can go back to America, Kitty can go to England, or you can stay in India. Wherever you are, my love is with you. But if you stay in India, you must also obey my orders implicitly, even though you may never see my face again. That just hit me. I said, imagine never seeing Baba's face again. I just wondered for a moment how I could take it. And I thought, oh well, India's nearer than the States. And so I said, I'll stay in India. Kitty also said she would stay in India. So Baba arranged that Kitty and I should go to stay with Meherji in Bombay. So Then just before we left, he dropped the tiniest little hint, saying that, possibly, he might call us something, just something, something to hang on to like a straw. So Kitty and I at first used to take long walks in Bombay, not so much because we were crazy about knowing Bombay, but we thought we'd keep fit so that if Baba did call us, we'd be all, ready for these walks and wouldn't get tired quickly. And in a way also we learned a lot about Bombay at that time. Well, a few months went by, and then Sunday Money wrote a letter. And the letter said that we should continue to stay in Bombay, and we should either help Homai, that's Meherji's wife, in the household, or we should get jobs. Well, Homai did not need any help in the household, so that meant Kitty and I had to get jobs. Well, neither of us were young women at the time. Indians have time, even in those days, this was 1949, 1950 by the time we got the message. Even in those days, people were not having jobs very easily. So Kitty and I thought, how are we, two Westerners, going to get jobs here in India? We went to the consulates, we went to the YWCA, we looked at ads in the newspapers, everything we did, we were desperate. So Baba said, do something, you have to do it. How are we going to get those jobs? Quite frantic. Then Homai one day said to Kitty, you used to teach piano in the old days. And she said, this school where my daughter goes is a very good school. It was Queen Mary High School in Bombay. And why don't you go down there and possibly you can get a job teaching music. So nothing loath, Kitty goes down and comes back after some hours. And when Kitty's got something on her mind, I said that I have never taught. I don't know the first thing about teaching. I've painted, I've taken commissions on work to do, that sort of thing. But to try to tell somebody else to do the work is quite impossible. Oh, she said, Miss Gayley, I like your work. I want you to come here. I said, I can't teach. And I said, you might just as well know it. I mean, there's no point in taking me on and then you find that I can't teach. I'm telling you now. Well, to make a long story short, she would have none of it. She insisted I should come. She said, and I said, the size of the classes. How can I teach so many people like that? So many little faces all looking up at me. She said, all right, Miss Gayley, what I'll do. She didn't know me. I mean, this is the first interview we'd ever had together. And she said, what I'll do is to give you the best pupils in each class, just a few, a handful. And now you take it on for a term, and if you don't like it, then we'll understand, and that will be, we'll call it a day. I mean, how could I refuse after that? It's impossible to refuse. So I said, all right. So at that time, I was only doing half-day work. Kitty was full-time. Well, I said, I've got a job, that's something. And they came to my first class. I kept a ring of Babas on, and I kept saying, Baba, 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 Baba to myself. My mouth and throat was getting drier and drier, and I went to that first class. I saw all these little faces looking up at me. Anyway, it got easier as time went on. Oh, yes, before that, that same day when Miss Groom engaged me, she said, you go and talk with the other drawing teacher. So Miss Groom evidently was a very good judge of faces, because when she passed through, she suddenly called me to her office and told the other teacher to go. And when I went to her office, she said to me, what is it, Miss Gayley? What's wrong? I said, I can't teach. I can't take the job. Why? Well, I didn't know how to teach, but I said, if I had to teach the way this woman wants teaching, I can't do it. He said, I give you carte blanche to teach exactly the way you like. I will not interfere in anything you do. I was flabbergasted. So, as I say, should I continue? So, as I say, I took it on. And little by little, things went a little easier. She was satisfied with what I was doing, and I got adjusted to these children. At the same time, Kitty had an awful lot of work and was giving an awful lot of homework for these children to do. So then I used to help Kitty correct her notebooks, and we'd be in 11 and 12 o'clock at night with our work. Then we suddenly get a letter from Money again. And in that letter she said that Baba said we could come and be with him for a short time on the condition that we got our jobs back when we went back to Bombay. Well, we had only been there, I think, about a term or so. And we had told Miss Groom beforehand that there was a possibility that we would not be permanent, and so that we went on that understanding. But nevertheless, a short time like that, and then suddenly saying we'd like to go and we want the jobs back, well, there was nothing else to do. We'd have to face it, because otherwise it meant then we would just write, Baba, we're not coming. We couldn't face this. So I went in to see Miss Groom that day, and Kitty came along. And I said, Miss Groom, we've had very, very urgent news and we would like to take leave for a short time, but of course we are very anxious to come back after that time. Would that be all right? She said, of course. I know you wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. She never asked us where we were going. She never asked us for how long we had to go. All she said was that I want you definitely to come back when you come to Bombay. So, of course, I was just throwing the head off and everything, and off we went and stayed with Baba. Then, in the meantime, Miss Groom started thinking up all sorts of other things for us to do. She gave more classes to Kitty, and Kitty was in charge of the whole of the classes there. And she gave me full-time work. I was teaching dramatics, 1 year French, and simpler sort of essays, and what do you call it? A bit of English here and there. My classes were not the large classes; they were the younger classes. But the dramatics was great fun. I never saw children who were so enthusiastic and were so happy about doing the work right. We'd given them a section of Dickens to do, and I had two groups, Kitty and I together, we did it. I did most of the coaching. And I used to make these children stay after school, and never once did they quibble and say, oh, why do we have to stay today, or anything like that. They were all enthusiasm. Yeah. We were told afterwards it was the best play they'd had on in the school in years. And it didn't cost a cent, because all we had to do was pay a few rupees out for somebody's beaver hat. The rest I showed the boys how to, the girls how to wear their brothers' suits and look like men in those days with the foreign hands and the collars like this. I got some of my dresses and old hats and made bonnets out of them. And it was very successful. Well, now, twice Baba called us, and twice the same thing happened, and twice Miss Groom handed our workload to the other teachers, and which didn't please them very much, and again said she wanted us to come back. In fact, she even wanted me to take a whole class and be in charge of it like Kitty. And I told Kitty, that's not possible. I said, I'm helping you now, and between the two of us, we're just managing to get the work done. Now, if I have my own class load and all that, I can't help you, and we won't do a good job. The third time Baba called us was during the holidays. And so that was all right, because we didn't have to disrupt the whole routine of the school doing that. And we went up to Mameshwar, and while we were there with Baba, Baba said to us, I'm going to Hyderabad now, and do you and Kitty want to go on now that you're settled at that school in Bombay? Or do you want to come with me to Hyderabad and take a chance on getting a job there? Oh, I didn't even think. I just said, I'm coming to Hyderabad. And Kitty said, too. So then the only thing and that was Kitty's suggestion, was that as Miss Groom had been so amazingly considerate, that the least we could do was, now that we were definitely going, we should at least be there for 2 months for her to have time to get some replacements. And Baba agreed to that and told us by a certain date we had to be in Hyderabad. During those last 2 months, we stayed at the school itself, which happened to be monsoon time, which was very nice because we never had to go out in the rain. And we had, sort of wonderful service, good old British style with the butler and early morning tea and little sandwiches in the afternoon and all that sort of thing. Very reasonable also. And Miss Groom belonged to, I don't know what denomination it is because it was a mission school, but the kind where you do sort of spontaneous prayers. And when we were staying there at the school in the evenings, we'd have to have these prayers before we retired for the night. At that time, we never mentioned about Baba there because being a mission school, we didn't want to disrupt things. And but I was determined that sooner or later Miss Groom was going to know about Baba. But what was so extraordinary is that when we hadn't been there such a long time in the school, when she told us one day that, it's most extraordinary, and it's also the reason why she was always anxious to have us back, and that is because from the time we went to that school, the whole atmosphere of the school had changed. How we just looked at ourselves and said, Baba. And so, as I say, when we were staying with her, those last 2 months, and I said, Kitty, I used to keep Baba's photo on my dressing table there, and I said, Kitty, we'll have to tell Miss Groom about Baba. And Kitty said, well, won't it sort of, with the mission and all that? I said, no, whatever it is, one way or the other, we have to tell her, and it's got to be done sometime. So she was a very busy woman, so, and you can't tackle it just sort of like that. So her sister was on a visit there at the time, was a bit lonesome. So she used to come up in the late afternoon after school was over, and she'd have tea with Kitty and me, and we'd talk. And gradually we brought in the subject of Baba. Because I knew perfectly well then she would go back and repeat it to Miss Groom, which she did. But Miss Groom one day called Kitty, and Kitty was out, so she asked me to come down. And she said, I'm hearing some very interesting things from my sister. I said, oh, you mean about Meher Baba? She said, yes. Now do tell me about it. So, well, I knew I couldn't just say, we take Baba for the avatar, and he's our Lord and Master and all that. She'd be a bit flummoxed. So I looked at her and I said, Miss Groom, Baba has all Christ qualities, and that she could understand. And then he said, he must be a very remarkable person. And I said, he is. And then I told her, I said, you remember, Miss Groom, the first time that you called us to your place and invited us for tea, and we had to say all the time, no thank you, when you were giving us some delectable sandwiches and cakes. She said, yes. I said, well, we happened to have an order from Baba that when we were in Bombay, we could accept liquid refreshment, but no food from anybody. And I said the order was still standing at the time. So in desperation, we had to tell her we weren't hungry. That was a white lie, but I mean, what could we do otherwise? And later on, Baba rescinded it. But she was very impressed with what we told her about Baba. Then the time came for us to leave the school. So this was the very last night at the school. And of course, the prayers were being said before we retired. Kitty and I were to leave the next day for Hyderabad. And as Miss Groom started to pray, I heard a murmur about Miss Davy and Miss Gayley. And just as that, as I pricked up my ears, she's going to say something very nice about us now that we're going, see, getting all set. And you know that just as she started to pray, there's a train, rail that goes nearby the school. And one never noticed the trains coming and going. But this particular time, just as when Miss Groom started to pray, the train went by. And I could hear the drone of her voice, the sound of the wheels on the track. And the whole time she was praying, the train was going. And as soon as the prayer was finished, the train had gone by. So we never did find out what she had to say about us. I think our egos would have been a little too inflated if we'd heard what she'd said, and Baba was having none of that. He and I were taking pretty seriously this business of going to Hyderabad and getting a job there, because after all, Baba had not said anything to the contrary, and naturally we expected to have to work there. We inquired from different sources, and through Nagesh Dadachanji, we met somebody who was connected with the Nizam's household or the government there, and we asked him if in any way he could introduce us to somebody and arrange about our teaching there in Hyderabad, which he said he would try and do. So when we got to Hyderabad, Kitty and I figured out bus routes and how long it would take to get into Secunderabad, where we would have had to go for the teaching, and how long it would take back, and so on and so forth. Then there was a lull. Nothing seemed to be happening. Then one day this man came to the house to call, and he said he was so very sorry that it was not possible for him to make any contacts for us about teaching. But he said, one thing I would like very much, and that is to take Meher Baba's darshan. It just happened at the time Baba was not in seclusion, and so I went in and I spoke to Baba. I said, explained the situation, and I said, he can't find us any jobs, but he's very anxious to take your darshan. So Baba came out, smiled very benignly, and took Baba's darshan, and off he went. And from that day, there was never any more word about Kitty and Marat having to teach or do anything except to be there with Baba. So somehow or other, Kitty and I felt that indirectly Baba had wanted to make that contact, and we were just the instruments for making the contact with that particular person. This was another time, considerably prior to this new life period, when Baba had taken a house in Hyderabad, a charming little house with a sort of a patio at the back, and in front there was a garden and a very small swimming pool. And Margaret Cross was there, and she used to teach them all swimming and diving. And it was very pleasant. And I forget the reason why I had to go into Secunderabad that day to meet Duncan, but I did. And on the trip back, Duncan had with him a big bag of sweets, toffees, as they call them here. And he offered me. I had one or two. They had some more. I said, I'll just take 2 or 3 from Margaret. So I tucked them in my pocket and went back to the house, and Duncan went on over to the Monday's quarters. In those days, we used to have supper rather early, the sweets in my bag. And Baba never came to Margaret's room, my room and Margaret's. And this particular evening, after supper, when I had just gone over to the bag to get Margaret's toffees for her, because I had told her I had them. And I had just shut the bag and turned around, and there was Baba standing in the door. And I, like a guilty child, standing with my hands behind my back like this. So, of course, Baba said, what have you got? Put the hand out like this, with these 2 or 3 toffees. Baba said, what are you doing with those? I said, I brought them to Mark. What? Said Baba, you didn't think of me first? Well, of course, I felt very much, but then I said, Baba, how could I just offer you anything so insignificant, just 3 little toffees like this? Bob said, no, you should have offered them to me first. So he promptly took them from me. Mark gave me a look, sort of, you've done me out of my toffees. And then Baba said, he had me explain how I got the toffees. So I didn't want to get Duncan too involved, but nevertheless, you have to tell the truth when Baba asks you. So I said, well, Don had given them to me. Well, what did he do with the rest? I said, I don't know, Baba, they were in the car. I don't know what he was going to do with them. Bob said, of course, you'll probably give them to the Monday. So what you have to do is to go over to their house, and you tell Duncan to take back every sweet that he's given to every one of the Monday, and you bring the bag back with you. So I had to. I don't know whatever Baba did with all that bag of sweets. But we never saw it again. Put them first to Baba. But it was so sort of insignificantly sweet little measly toffees. Which reminds me, as I was saying before, when Kitty and I were in the New Life in Bombay, Baba's strict order was that we should not in any way accept any thing to eat from any Baba lovers or anybody, excepting Homai, Mirji's wife. But we could accept any kind of liquid, tea, coffee, soda, Coca-Cola, what have you. And I think the reason that Baba did that is because he knew that many of his lovers there in Bombay, knowing that we were there, would probably want to entertain us at meals. Many of them couldn't afford it. So Baba just put a wholesale, what do you call it? So what they used to do, and Kitty and I'd go and call on them, was to take ice cream and mangoes, and they'd mash the mangoes up into a pulp, and they'd mash the ice cream into a pulp till it was practically liquid, and then they'd give it to us to drink. And all the different concoctions that we never thought them up. The other people used to think them up, because they knew we could only drink the things. So everything they made drinkable. And then we used to... So at the time of Baba's birthday, Anavaz and Nariman always used to have a sort of a buffet supper for all Baba lovers there in Bombay. And naturally, we wanted to go too. But then if we went there, we would have had to sit around and watch everybody eat, because we could not accept anything from Anavaz. So what Anavaz did was that she made a packet from Kitty and a packet for me of all the what there was to be had in the buffet. And she sent the 2 packets to Homai. Homai gave them to Kitty and me, and we took them back to Anavaz's house, and then we had our buffet supper with the others. Oh. That way we were keeping Baba's order. At the same time, we had managed to circumvent the difficulty. As long as that Homai gave it to us, we could accept it. So if Anavaz sent it to Homai gave the package to us, then it was all right, then we could eat it afterwards. So instead of eating it home and going to the party, we just took our package with us and had that and didn't touch any of the other. So when Baba used to give these orders like that, you had to sort of use your ingenuity sometimes. There was a time when one mustn't touch money, one mustn't touch men, and then we'd be traveling on the train, and sometimes Baba would be traveling with the women, sometimes he would be traveling with the men. This particular time he was traveling with the women, and he sent me on a very crowded platform to go and give a message to the Mandali, several cars down from where we were. But at that time I had that order, I mustn't touch men. So what am I going to do? I have to obey Baba and give the order. At the same time I mustn't touch men. So what I kept saying to myself as I sort of danced myself down the platform is that I'm not touching them. If they're touching me, I can't help it. I mean, you have to work out Baba's orders sometimes, otherwise you're stuck.
I remember one order story that turned out another way. You were having some difficulties and Baba said apologize.
Well, that's
the other side of the story.
That is the other extreme. You see, it's that same thing where Baba said that if he gave any important order, we would find no difficulty whatsoever in carrying out Baba's order, because we were feeling very noble that we, would do this, no matter whether it was a matter of life and death or... I mean, like as Baba said, if I told you to walk down the street without your clothes on, you think, well, I'm doing it for Baba, so it's all right, and you just forget yourself. Well, I mean, that's an important thing. So you think, I'm doing something big. These little tiny things that you have to do for Baba, those are the things that, as far as I'm concerned, I was always tripping up on. And this particular time was when there was an altercation with someone who was trying to put me in the wrong, all through a complete misunderstanding. And naturally, as I say, in those days, I still was very angry. I mean, my temper was very live. It wasn't subdued very quickly. And so I got very annoyed when this person still behaved like this. And as usual, these things come to Baba's ears. And so Baba called me and asked me what was happening. So I explained the situation, but you could see I was still very annoyed about the whole thing. And so when I finished what I had to say, Baba looked at me and said, "Go and apologize." I apologize? As if anybody should apologize. They should apologize to me. Why should I apologize to them? What's going on like this? And then I heard myself. And I saw Baba's face, and I said, "Oh, Baba, I'll go and apologize." Baba said, "No, now it's too late. If you had apologized at the time when I told you to, there would have been something in that. But now your apology would be meaningless." So you learn from all these little things. But each time the situation is different. So, or as far as I'm concerned, each time I have to just, as I say, trip badly. It took years to begin to suddenly hear myself and try to see myself as others probably saw me. Because I understand the youngsters in the ashram in the early days used to be frightened to death of me. They said I was an ogre. And I couldn't imagine that I was so fierce, but they all told me I was. But now they all love me and they say, you're a different person. So I said, fine.
About your work of carrying things back and forth a lot.
Well, you see, in those early ashram days up on the hill, we were not allowed to have any men to do any heavy work. Like you see all these men
some
here.
People might think you were having extraordinary experiences. And
oh, no.
So you got to tell them what you
life was anything but spiritual experiences. When we were with Baba, it was all very down to earth.
Tell them what you did then.
And, well, as I say, I was jack of all trades in the sense that I was very strong in those days. And I had a little idea about hammering things and nailing things and so on and so forth. And packing, I happened to boast to Baba once that I probably packed in another incarnation. So after that, I could have bitten my tongue off afterwards, because after that, Baba used to give me all the packing to do. And no sooner I'd get all the tin boxes packed for going away, then Kitty would start unpacking them because she'd forgotten something in them. And I used to get so angry. Well, that's just one of the minor things. But actually, you see, we had no men on the hill in those days to do any sort of manual labor. We had the women that came that emptied the well, and if anything very heavy was there to be done. But I mean, the women wouldn't know how to hammer something together that was falling apart. So always it seemed to devolve on me. I didn't mind, excepting that Baba would call me, you see, and tell me, "Now, Rano, you're under no circumstances to do any heavy work after eating. Whatever you do, you must not do any heavy work after eating." "No, Baba." Then I would just be in the middle of my meal, and Baba would call me, you see, to the room where he'd be sitting. And I'd come, Baba would say, "Open that packing case." Well, he couldn't say, "Well, Baba, I'm eating." You just open the packing cases. But otherwise, on my own, naturally, I would try as much as possible to obey Baba. Even though Baba always told me I spent my time arguing, I mean, certain things you couldn't argue. It's like there was one time when we had to take turns at being on silence. And this particular time, Baba had called me to ask me a question. And I didn't know that I could answer Baba, you see, when he asked me something. So Baba asked me a question which I could not give the answer to. So I just stood in front of Baba and shrugged my shoulders. Baba looked at me and said, "What is this, shrugging your shoulders in front of me?" Baba said, "For heaven's sake, speak." And I answered him. And then, of course, after meetings, I answered. And Baba said, "Now observe your silence again." Well, one time it was very funny. A situation like that arose which Baba asked me to answer him, which I did. Then I forgot. I went right on talking, quite forgetting how I was supposed to be. And here is everybody making faces at me, and I'm wondering what was wrong with them. I forgot I was still supposed to be on silence. But there are people who are outside of the ashram in the old days who used to think that, as Ed just said now, that we were just being all spiritual. But naturally, on special occasions, when Baba had birthday celebrations or anything like that, Baba would sit with the people, looking radiant, giving discourses every time. And Baba was sitting with us. I mean, we could go and be with him. But if there was something you had to do, well, Baba would say, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be doing your job." So, in time, you did learn that you couldn't just sit around with Baba when you felt like it. Sometimes, especially here in Meherzad, we would try to get our work all finished and ready, you see, and done with before Baba would come over to the other side so that one could be with Baba when he was sitting in his room or anything like that.
What was the daily routine, just in general?
Well, sort of difficult to say, isn't it? Get up in the morning, eat your breakfast. And in the early days, of course, Baba used to get up very early. I remember in the ashram days, it was getting up in the dark. And, I never liked getting up in the dark. And that's another one of those stories of mine where I was called that particular morning, and as it was still dark, I was only sort of half dressed when Baba sent for me in the kitchen there at Meherbad. In that kitchen where Mansari lives. And Baba looks at me with one of those lovely smiles and said, listen to that kettle sing. And here I was sort of like this, half asleep and struggling to have gotten dressed to come rushing over because Baba called. My face, you see, just gave me away. He said, listen to the kettle sing. I said, Baba's called me all the way here to hear, as if I hadn't heard a kettle sing before. And Baba looked at me so reproachfully. He said, it isn't the kettle singing that I've called you for, but the very fact that I thought of you is what is important. Each time Baba would give us a little thing like that, a little sort of reminder that we should think of only Baba and not of whatever particular thing it was. That, as Baba said, the kettle was of no importance, but that he had thought to call me. Just like, as I say, in those very early days, especially with the Westerners, Baba used to say to us, all I want from you is love. Just be natural and give me your love. So of course, we used to be very natural with Baba. Then gradually, when the ashram days came along, and before we started on the blue bus, Baba slowly started withdrawing himself from us outwardly. I never felt Baba was withdrawn inwardly. You always felt Baba, but outwardly, Baba would you could not be natural with Baba in the same way, and couldn't express sometimes what you could in the old days. And then there came a day when Baba walked past me and he didn't see me. Then Baba did it a number of other times. I started feeling sort of, I didn't show anything outwardly, but I said, after all, Baba knows I'm here. And just brushed past me. Then in the end, I solved it very much to my satisfaction. I said to myself, the effort it takes Baba to ignore me makes me all the more conscious that Baba knows I'm there. So after that, then I was quite happy. I didn't mind how much Baba ignored me, because I knew that he was conscious of my presence, even though he didn't outwardly express it. And that was the sort of something between Baba and me.
Something that...
But before that, I was very bothered.
He had to be
very
just
bothered.
as much aware of you to ignore you
Of course.
as he would as if he told you all.
Of course.
It's really very special.
But then I had to figure it all out for myself. He wasn't doing it for me. Oh, dear. Yes, we had some wonderful days with Baba. And Baba used to tell us in those very early days, make the most of it. It's not going to be like this later on. Because sometimes we take things for granted. Just like Baba, when we'd be too natural with Baba, Baba would say, remember, I am God. Because, what do you call it, when it's proximity, then you get too familiar. And the Baba just let us just get so far. It was a very wonderful time. And so many different phases of it. When you consider that the very first phase of our being in Nasik, just the Westerners, especially, you see, when Baba called us there and said, you come for 5 years, and we all put it in the hand, we'll stay for 5 years, and it wasn't even 5 months, and the first one was going back. Well, naturally, we were still new to the ways of the Master. We didn't realize that Baba could chop and change at his own sweet will, and he just accepted, you see. I think, "What? Baba told us to stay for 5 years, and already he's sending everybody away? What's happening, you know?" It was puzzling. And then gradually, you take it in your stride. All right, this is what. One of the loveliest trips I had was when Baba in December of 1934, Baba cabled us that Nani and Rano and I were to go with him to America. And just the three of us in the Mandali on shipboard, pushing ahead of everybody up the hill. And just as I got near Baba, Baba put his hand out like that and took my hand. And after that, I just floated up the hill. We left everybody behind. I wasn't even breathless when I got to the top of it. But just as if I didn't even touch the ground. I mean, to this day, I can still feel that sensation. So I said it was worth rushing up after him just for that. Because as I say, at that time, I was still very shy with Baba, because I didn't know him very well. And gradually, I got more bold. One time, Baba went through a period where he used to just take the palm of his hand, and lay the mandali flat if they did something he didn't like. Baba, especially in those early days when he was very, very like this, and slightest little thing used to annoy Baba, catch him by the ear and knock him out. Well, one time in Panchgani, I must have said something. I can't remember now what it was. We were standing, there was Narina, there was a few others there in the house where we were staying. And whatever it was that I said, it didn't please Baba, because the first thing I knew, there was Baba's one finger came and caught me here on the chin. Just like that, across, just a glance. Oh, I felt like this, you see. Baba said, "Did it hurt?" No, it didn't hurt. But to this day, I can actually feel that touch there. That's spot there. The nearest Baba ever gave to beating me up for my misbehavior. I was always dirty. Baba used to say sometimes to me after, "Why aren't you more like Nani?" I said, "But Nani was something special, and I'm me. What can I do?" God, I could never have been an imitation of Nani. We were two completely opposite characters in every degree. So now, what is there to say? At the beginning, when we Westerners met Baba, he was known as the perfect master. We would address letters to Sadhguru Meher Baba. And it wasn't until later on, I think it was that time in Hamirpur, when Baba said that he was the avatar. But before that, Baba used to tell us now and then he was God. This seemed quite natural, even though I knew nothing about a perfect master or an avatar or any kind of a master. If Baba said it was so, well, it must be so. There was no question in my mind about it. I've never questioned anything Baba said. I have gotten angry sometimes with Baba. I never thought I could. I was amazed at myself the first time I ever was. Question in my mind about it. I've never questioned anything Baba said. I have gotten angry sometimes with Baba. I never thought I could. I was amazed at myself the first time I ever was. Would ever be a time when I could be angry with Baba? But there have been a few moments in my life with Baba when I have been, but it's never lasted long. In fact, there's even been times when I thought I wanted to run away from Baba. He would just sometimes try you to the nth degree, and you just felt sometimes you just couldn't take it. And then when you get alone, or when I got alone, then I'd have a fight talk with myself, and I'd say, "Don't be an idiot, Rano. Look at where you are. Don't ever think like that again." So I tried not to, but sometimes, Baba always knew how far he could go with you. but you never did. And you'd always say, oh, this is just the nth degree, you see, but you know, just a little further about you go. It's all for your good, so, but at the time you don't realize any of that. You just, especially a person like me who I say, will let their temper get the better of them. But the temper has improved, I've been told. So that's something. And so now we go on, carry on. Baba would want us to do. Until Baba says the endless end.
Well, did you ever feel you wanted to run away?
Yes, that's what I said.
Oh, you did.
Actually, run away. No, I think that's
Where would you have gone?
Where would I have gone? That's just it, you see. I couldn't get away from Baba. I knew that, but you know, when you're in a certain environment, you just want to break out from that environment. And when you're in that mood, you know, you don't think. And it's only afterwards when you sort of come to your senses, you realize, of course, as you said, where would you go? Because wherever you go, Baba's there. And once you've gotten into Baba's net, you can't get out of it.